I'm joined now by All Rise News' Adam Klasfeld. Adam, we have some major news about one of Donald Trump's U.S. attorneys. Can you explain what that news is?
What happened is Alina Habba announced her resignation from the District of New Jersey. But to call it a resignation, Brian, gives it more weight than what it is, because Alina Habba has been disqualified from the position of U.S. attorney for some time now. She took that step of formally, quote unquote, resigning after the Third Circuit disqualified her and said that she was not properly appointed to that position and has not been serving in that position lawfully since this summer.
You know, it's kind of like somebody who gets cut from a football team and then announces a month later that they're hereby stepping away from that football team. It's like that's all well and good, but the football team already announced they don't want you anymore.
You didn't make the team.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's what happened here. She didn't. Now, I printed out her statement because it's a doozy of a statement. She blames a number of things. She blames the judges. She blames the blue slip process. And let me tell you what she means by that. She means the appointments clause to the U.S. Constitution, that the New Jersey happens to be a blue state, that she would need to get the approval of Democratic senators. But you know when this was not a problem to get the approval of the Senate? Every other presidency where U.S. attorneys have been appointed.
Right.
Suddenly, the blue slip process is a problem now that in Trump 2.0, he wants to stack these U.S. attorneys' offices with loyalists who will advance his agenda rather than uphold the law and Constitution.
What are the implications for ongoing cases, if there are any ongoing cases that involve Alina Habba?
I'm glad that you brought that up. She makes a very interesting point in this statement. I'm going to read from it. She says, for months, these judges stopped conducting trials and entering sentences. And she says, leaving violent criminals on the streets. So I want to unpack that line. Of course, here she's blaming the judges. Here's what her holding on to this position has done. Even before a lower court judge had found that she was unlawfully appointed, people stopped pushing forward trials, because this moment that that double jeopardy attaches and the jury is sworn in, you reach a point of no return.
Right.
So judges very cautiously said, wait a minute, there's some serious concern about whether Alina Habba is legitimately in her position. Even before the first thing was adjudicated, cases were snarling to a halt. That hasn't been stopping, Brian. That has been going on for months now. And she is right that is a disservice to the people of the District of New Jersey. And this is also happening across the country. But is that the fault of the judges for upholding the appointments clause of the Constitution and federal law? Or is that the fault of this Trump DOJ that is doing something that was never done in U.S. history?
In terms of her acknowledging objective reality and stepping aside, what kind of impact does that have on other U.S. attorneys who may be defiantly continuing to pretend that they have grounds to stay in their role, recognizing that even Alina Habba is reading the writing on the wall?
You know, that's a really interesting question, because just hours before Alina Habba gave up the ghost, you had this statement, a joint statement by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, criticizing the judges of the Eastern District of Virginia for disrespecting, allegedly, U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan. Except, here's the problem, Lindsay Halligan is not now and never was U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, and therefore judges who are magistrate judges and district judges are not showing her disrespect by reminding her she's not lawfully presenting cases in their court. So we'll see what happens. It looks like that the DOJ is shuffling the deck a little bit here, but their intransigence doesn't seem to be going away. We'll see if Lindsay Halligan ultimately follows suit, but as of this morning, she wasn't.
So what are next steps in terms of a U.S. attorney in New Jersey? Is Trump allowed to just continue appointing acting U.S. attorneys in New Jersey for these 120-day periods just in perpetuity, or what's the deal here?
courts have said no. And most importantly, the Third Circuit has said no. The Third Circuit has said that you cannot end run the rigors of the Appointments Clause. You cannot end run the rigors of the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. So we'll see whether the Trump DOJ starts following the rules here, or whether we have some of this chaos that that is being condemned by Alina Habba rightly as to the symptoms, but while still embracing the causes.
In terms of the cases that Alina Habba has put her name on, what happens to those cases? What happens to those efforts at indictments?
So one thing that the Third Circuit found, unlike with James Comey's cases, unlike with Letitia James's case, we had a Third Circuit ruling that the underlying indictment being challenged was fine, because it wasn't only that this was an indictment that was brought under different circumstances. It wasn't a sort of thing where only Alina Habba is in the grand jury room and the problem can't be cured. I imagine this is going to be settled on a case-by-case basis, and courts are going to apply the test about whether the cases stand up on their own. But I think that's why judges were being properly careful here, pausing trials, pausing sentences. This is the stuff that Alina Habba was condemning here. But I think the alternative would have been potentially these cases evaporating.
Do you think that it's uncharacteristic of this administration for anybody in Trump's orbit to basically concede defeat? Like I wouldn't expect Trump to do it. I would expect him to fight until the bitter end and then just create some new precedent out of whole cloth and suggest that she's allowed to do it. And so why do you think that we have a situation here where Alina Habba effectively just, bowed out?
Well, there's also the other principle of physics, which is Trump always chickens out. And we also have what we've seen with Ed Martin, right? He was the U.S. attorney for the District of D.C. until it became very clear that no one was going to go and confirm someone with that kind of record of extremism. And they put him in a different position, the so-called weaponization division of the DOJ. And it looks like that Alina Habba's following that same trajectory. They're going to invent some other role for her that doesn't require any sort of support from the Senate or any approval from the judges of her district. They're going to plant her somewhere else inside the DOJ. And here's, again, I have her statement in front of me, and it's almost, laughable proposition. Do not mistake compliance for surrender. This decision will not weaken the Justice Department, and it will not weaken me. I didn't lose, says right. Alina Habba, in the midst of admitting defeat.
It's giving a lot of Donald Trump with a Never Surrender t-shirt, but his picture of the mugshot is like right in the middle of the t-shirt.
Exactly. The very picture of surrendering to authorities.
Right. And so in terms of the people who Trump is going to try and appoint to these positions across the country, what kind of impact is the fact that he's now gotten rebuked on the Alina Habba front, on the Lindsey Halligan front, on I think 3 or 4 other U.S. attorneys across the country? How will that impact the appointment of these basically right-wing hacks as U.S. attorneys across the country?
Well, the most immediate effect is this isn't going to be the case that tests this issue before the Supreme Court. And one of the things that's interesting with them, battening down with Lindsey Halligan in the Eastern District of Virginia is they haven't appealed that ruling. So will they try to go up to a different appellate court? Will they go if and when they lose in that appellate court, will they take it to the Supreme Court? Or will they keep trying to rack up losses in different districts to avoid a Supreme Court reckoning where they might hear the words, the Appointments Clause says what the Appointments Clause says, unless, the 6 on the court decide to rescue Trump again?
Well, I mean, look, that wouldn't be the strangest thing in the world. We have seen numerous instances where this 6-judge block just has decided to rewrite the Constitution in blind deference to Trump. I mean, they basically ignored Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that said that someone who's given aid or comfort to an insurrection or to insurrectionists can't run again for federal office. Here he is, the president of the United States. They've decided by fiat that a president is protected from criminal prosecution. That doesn't exist in the Constitution. They're right now considering the fact that they're going to overturn, Humphrey's executor, which
Right.
allows Donald Trump broad deference to fire people from independent agencies, which was not the rule before. And so this Supreme Court has fallen over itself to show blind deference to Trump.
Absolutely. And the Humphreys executor precedent that has lasted for 90 years until on the emergency docket, the majority, the conservative supermajority here, greenlit Trump's plan to essentially remove Rebecca Slaughter from the FTC. That Humphreys executor technically remains law of the land, but they were so raring to let Trump act as though it's not that before this morning's arguments began, they let him do it. Now, we'll see, even with that, even with this record of this Supreme Court, what Alina Habba's resignation suggests to me is they didn't like their odds before the Supreme Court, because otherwise I think they'd still be fighting this.
Right, that's a great point. Any instance where they think they even have an inkling of the opportunity to win, they've brought these cases up to the Supreme Court. So the fact that they won't hear goes to show that maybe even this White House that views barely any check on its own power as not worth it to go up to the Supreme Court suggests that it was that doomed of a case from the start. So with that said, just want to remind everybody here, if you are not yet subscribed to All Rise News, which is Adam's news outlet, please go ahead and subscribe. This is independent journalism at its finest. Oftentimes when he's going across the country, whether it's going to Albany, where we just spoke to him a few days ago for covering the Letitia James trial, this is all happening on his own dime. He doesn't have some major media conglomerate backing him. So if you'd like to support true, legal, independent journalism, this is a great way to do it. So I'm going to put the link to All Rise News right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Adam, as always, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Brian.